When my boyfriend pressed the wrong elevator button for the 99th time, going to my friend Jade's floor instead of mine, he looked at me accusingly. Why didn't you remind me? Well, since we're already at Jade's door, might as well help her change that light bulb. I froze. Ever since Jade moved to the floor above mine a year ago, my boyfriend had been pressing the wrong floor button every single time. Once when I had a high fever, he delivered medicine to Jade's apartment instead because she had menstrual cramps. Another time he was supposed to meet me for a movie, but he delivered the tickets to Jade's place. Even on my birthday, he showed up at Jade's door carrying my cake. And now watching him walk into my best friend's apartment. Without looking back, I coldly pressed the elevator close button. He had forgotten today was the day my lease expired. Today was the day I was moving out. Since he loved going to Jade's place so much, he could stop coming to mine altogether. When I went downstairs, the moving company had already arrived. Miss Winters, start moving now. I nodded. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan Lucas. Where did you go? Don't wander off. This sudden show of concern made my fingers tremble slightly. But the moment I opened the chat, his next message popped up. Go downstairs to the store and buy me a wrench. Jade doesn't have one here. I stared at his message for several seconds. We hadn't suddenly noticed I wasn't following behind him. He only realized I wasn't by his side because he needed me to do something for him. Scrolling up through our chat history, every single message was related to Jade Morgan. Give Jade that skincare set your coworker brought you from France. Buy you a different one. Jade mentioned wanting Japanese food last time. Let's go after you get off work today. I already made a reservation. Ethan's messages to me were always declarative statements. He had already decided. He never thought to ask for my opinion. The most recent message before these was from that rainy day. When I asked if he could pick me up, he said, I'm already home. Just take a cab back yourself. But the next second, Jade posted on her social media. A tilted umbrella sheltering her as she got into the passenger seat. Almost got trapped in the rain. Lucky someone came to my rescue. I recognized that car interior all too well. I used to think that since he was my boyfriend and Jade was my best friend, I should be happy they got along well. But my repeated compromises only made Ethan worse. This time I didn't reply. As I was packing in my room, Ethan sent another message. Why aren't you back yet? Jade says she wants French food. I'm taking her there first. Come meet us later. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. We make plans to eat together. But when I was late because of work or traffic, all that was left for me were cold leftovers. And Ethan's response to my hurt feelings was always indifferent. Jade has stomach problems. Pete ate first. The food is just a little cold. It still tastes fine. Stop making a fuss. Stop making a fuss. When a pipe burst in my apartment and left the whole place flooded. I called him. He said the same thing. I don't have time to help you with that. Find a repairman yourself. Stop making a fuss. So, I washed the curtains myself. Changed light bulbs myself. Slowly learning not to depend on him. But with Jade, he showed a completely different face. You don't need to be so independent as a woman. If you need anything from now on, I'll help you. You live so close to Vienna anyway. It's no trouble. I didn't understand why the same kind of help was considered. Making a fuss when I was his girlfriend, but no trouble when it came to Jade. I swallowed the bitterness in my heart and messaged Ethan. You two enjoy. I have things to do. It took him a long time to reply. Throwing another tantrum. Vienna winters. How old are you? Stop being childish. I had thrown tantrums before. Last winter, I had a fever of 102 degrees. I was shivering all over and called him to bring me medicine, but he said he was at Jade's place. Jade had menstrual cramps and couldn't get out of bed, so he went to rub her stomach. I said I was suffering, too. He was silent for 2 seconds before saying, You've always had a strong constitution, haven't you? How bad could it be? Just buy some ibuprofen. That was the first time I felt I couldn't take it anymore. He was my boyfriend, yet I could never be his priority. I asked him for a breakup, but he didn't say a word, just blocked me. First, I knew I loved him too much. I was too dependent on him, so he let me cry for 2 days. Let me cry myself dry. Then, he had Jade invite me out to dinner. I pathetically chose to reconcile. After that, I never threw tantrums again. But this time was different. I wasn't throwing a tantrum. I was serious. Movers went in and out, and the things in my apartment decreased piece by piece. Only then did I realize that after 7 years of dating, there was almost nothing of Ethan's in my home. A pair of dusty slippers, a cup he'd used once. Couldn't find a third item. Even the slippers and cup were things I had bought. He had never given me any proper gifts. When Jade moved, he brought her a housewarming present. On Jade's birthday, he prepared a large bouquet of her favorite white roses. But to me, he always said, formalistic things are meaningless when two people live together. It's better to be practical. I had questioned him, expressed my dissatisfaction. He said, I give your best friend gifts to make you look good, don't I? I laughed bitterly at myself. My phone buzzed. Mom was calling. Hello, Vienna. Honey, how did things go with you and Ethan? Discussing the wedding not long ago. Ethan and I had met with both our parents. Both families were very satisfied. When it came time to set the wedding date, Ethan said his career was in an upward phase and there was no rush to get married. At the time, though disappointed, I still understood his work pressure. But now, I was only grateful. A man who couldn't even remember where my door was. After marriage, would I have to wait alone in an empty house forever? Mom, we're not getting married. I'm planning to break up. Mom's voice immediately became tense. Why did he wrong you somehow? No. I just suddenly feel we're not compatible. On the other end of the line, Mom was clearly silent for a moment. After all, everyone knew I had loved Ethan Lucas for a full 7 years. How deep 7 years of feelings ran. Mom knew. Jade knew too. I was the one who pursued Ethan first to get close to him. I listened to his favorite bands, read books in his field, even secretly joined the same gym just to run into him. After graduation, he signed with a company in New York without a second thought. I gave up the job. My professor had lined up for me and followed him with my suitcase. Mom was so angry she didn't speak to me for 3 days. But I only said, Mom, if I miss him, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Back then, Jade had cheated me in frustration. Vanna Winters, you're going to ruin yourself over this man. Jade and I had been best friends for 10 years. She had long since become as important to me as family, but no one expected that now. She would enjoy my boyfriend's care without a second thought. Completely disregarding my feelings. Looking at Jade's newly posted romantic dinner on social media, my eyes stung. The video was tagged at that restaurant I had researched so thoroughly. Flickering candle light, exquisite dishes, pleasant piano music in the background. But every time I invited Ethan to go there with me, he always said, we're about to get married. Can you be a little more frugal spending thousands on one meal? Candlelight dinner. We can have that at home. He said it so rightfully that I could only swallow my expectations again and again. But now with one word from Jade saying she wanted it, he took her to that restaurant I had longed for. When the last item was moved, I collapsed exhausted on the sofa. The last time I moved, I called Ethan and he said he was too busy with work and told me to find someone myself to save money. I could only grit my teeth and move everything myself. By the end, I was so exhausted that my chronic back problem flared up, forcing me to rest in bed for 2 days. But when Jade moved, Ethan specifically took time off work. Moving is so exhausting. Your best friend is single. We should help her out. I watched him bustling about, sweat soaking his hair and felt he was utterly unfamiliar. So, he wasn't incapable of helping someone move. He just couldn't spare a single day off for me. While I was organizing things, my phone exploded with calls. Ethan was calling. Vienna Winters, open the door. You even changed the password. What's that supposed to mean? I was silent for a moment before speaking. Doesn't mean anything. Ethan Lucas, let's break up. But the person on the other end acted as if he hadn't heard me. His voice was suppressing anger. Jade remembered you wanted to eat at that restaurant. You didn't come, but she especially got takeout for you. And what do? You change the password and won't even open the door when I knock. Vienna Winters, stop being so unreasonable. I wasn't sure if he hadn't heard me say we should break up or if he was so used to dismissing my request for a breakup as just another unreasonable tantrum. I was about to repeat myself when he had already hung up. I laughed bitterly at myself. My fault. I had loved Ethan Lucas too openly, too publicly. Even he himself didn't believe I would leave him. The next day when I went to the mall to buy things for my new place, I turned around a shelf and ran straight into 2 people. Ethan was carrying shopping bags large and small. Jade was walking beside him. The smiles on both their faces stiffened the moment they saw me. Vienna, don't misunderstand. Ethan is just helping me buy things. Worried I couldn't carry them alone. Jade explained while trying to reach for my hand, but Ethan yanked her back. Why? Explained to her. She hasn't even apologized for yesterday. Jade, you spoil her too much. That's why she's so ungrateful. Jade looked at me with concern, but still obediently followed Ethan to the checkout counter, watching their backs. My heart felt like it had a gaping hole. Ethan never accompanied me shopping. He said shopping was too tiring, too. If you need something, just order delivery. Why go through all that trouble yourself? He was carrying bags large and small for Jade without complaint. Outside the mall, Ethan loaded everything into the trunk. Jade had already gotten into the passenger seat and rolled down the window to wave at me. Ethan naturally said, "Get in. I'll drive you both home." See? My eyes land on the girlfriend's exclusive seat sticker on the passenger side. He frowned somewhat impatiently. Jade hurt her back at the gym recently. The passenger seat has more space. You sit in the back for now. Look at that. He remembered all of Jade's habits. He remembered her bad back. He remembered her menstrual cramps, but he couldn't remember the old injury I got from moving heavy boxes. My nose stung. I forced myself to speak. No thanks. It's not on my way. Jade reached to unbuckle her seat belt. Tiana, why are you being like this? Don't you want me in the passenger seat? I'll get out right now. But Ethan pressed her hand down first and sneered. If it's not on your way, forget it. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, the car started and drove away from me with me. Ethan never seemed to have much patience. A few days later, Ethan sent me an address again. My mom invited you to dinner to discuss the wedding. I typed and deleted in the message box, hesitating for a long time before finally replying with a simple okay. Even if I had decided to break up, I should give the older generation an explanation in person. After all, after 7 years together, Ethan's mother had been relatively good to me. When I walked into the private dining room, Mrs. Lucas was already there. I exchanged pleasantries with her. Only then did Ethan arrive late with Jade Mom. Jade works at the company next to mine. He's also Vienna's good friend. This restaurant is close to the office, so I brought her along. Mrs. Lucas cleared her throat lightly, her expression somewhat unpleasant, but Ethan acted as if he didn't notice and directly picked up the menu to start ordering. Everything he ordered was Jade's favorite dishes. He and Jade both loved spicy food, but I couldn't handle it. Every time the three of us ate Mexican food together, they would enjoy the peppers with relish. While I could barely take 2 bites before coughing uncontrollably, Ethan, don't order so many spicy dishes. Mrs. Lucas frowned and looked at me. Only then did Ethan seem to remember, saying casually, then let's get this almond pudding. Vienna likes sweet things. Bitterness welled up in my heart. After ordering everything, he finally deigned to consider my taste as an afterthought. Jade looked somewhat troubled, glancing between Ethan and me. Vienna is allergic to nuts. Reminded by someone else, Ethan finally showed some panic, quickly flipping through the menu. Oh, then we'll change it. How about no need to bother? I stood up and interrupted him. How ridiculous. 7 years yet not enough time for him to learn my tastes. Even my dietary restrictions had to be pointed out by someone else. I looked apologetically at Mrs. Lucas and spoke softly. I'm sorry, Mrs. Lucas, I won't be staying for dinner. Ethan, Lucas, and I have already broken up. After saying this, I turned and left the private room. Ethan didn't chase after me. It wasn't until evening that Ethan finally showed up at my old apartment door. He rang the doorbell over and over, but no one answered. Impatience had just begun to show on his face when a neighbor stuck their head out. Stop knocking. This is an empty unit. The woman who lived here moved out last week. The hallway of the apartment building was exceptionally quiet, save for the hum of the old elevator motor vibrating through the concrete walls. Ethan stood frozen in front of the door to Unit 1102. The brass numbers slightly tarnished at the edges stared back at him like mocking eyes. He pressed the doorbell again, a long demanding buzz echoed through the crack under the door, followed by a heavy, suffocating silence. Vienna, Ethan called out, his voice laced with a familiar edge of irritation. He always used when he felt she was being difficult. He knocked harder. The wood rattling against the frame. Stop playing games. I know you're in there. Jade went out of her way to pack this food for you. And you're acting like a spoiled child. Open the door. No sound came from within. No soft footsteps. No quiet sigh of resignation. No click of the lock. Usually by the third knock, Vienna would have opened the door with that weary apologetic look in her eyes, ready to take whatever blame he threw at her just to keep the peace. Excuse me, young man. A sharp voice cut through the dim hallway. Ethan turned around, his fist still raised. An elderly woman from Unit 1104 was peering out of her doorway, her brow furrowed in disapproval. Could you stop that racket? There's no one in there to hear you. Ethan frowned, his hand dropping to his side. What do you mean? My girlfriend lives here. The neighbor let out a dry, dismissive chuckle. Not anymore, she doesn't. The moving truck was here all day yesterday. Carried out everything down to the curtains. The landlord's already got the cleaning crew scheduled for Monday. If you're her boyfriend, I'm surprised you didn't know. The words didn't make sense. Ethan's mind stumbled over them, trying to find a logical explanation. Moved yesterday. That's impossible. Ethan muttered more to himself than to the neighbor. She didn't mention anything about moving. Well, she certainly didn't look like she was planning on coming back, the woman said, shutting her door with a firm click. Ethan stood alone in the hallway, the fluorescent light overhead flickering slightly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He unlocked it, his fingers flying to Vienna's contact info. He hit call. The number you have dialed is currently unavailable or has restricted incoming calls. A cold sweat broke out across the back of his neck. He opened their chat history. The last message he had sent was a string of reprimands about her unreasonable behavior at the restaurant. Beneath it, his screen showed a small gray exclamation mark next to his latest text. You are no longer connected with this contact. She had blocked him, not just on WeChat, but his phone number, his social media, everything. Ethan's chest tightened, a strange, unfamiliar panic rising in his throat. He took a step back from the empty apartment door. No, he thought, shaking his head. This is just another one of her tantrums. Vienna loved him too much. She had followed him to New York, given up her career prospects, and spent 7 years catering to his every whim. She couldn't just leave. He walked down to the elevator, his boots heavy on the linoleum. He pressed the button for the 12th floor. He needed to talk to Jade. Jade was Vienna's best friend. She would know where Vienna was hiding, and she would help him smooth this over just like she always did. When the elevator door slid open on the 12th floor, Ethan walked briskly to Jade's door and knocked. A moment later, the door opened. Jade stood there wearing a soft cream-colored sweater that fell off one shoulder. Her eyes were wide and bright, a faint, sweet smile touching her lips when she saw him. Ethan, back so soon. Did Vienna like the takeout? Ethan didn't answer. He stepped past her into the warm lavender-scented apartment. Vienna moved out. Jade paused, her hand still on the doorknob. The smile faded from her face, replaced by a look of perfect, innocent confusion. What? Moved out? What do you mean? Her apartment is empty. The neighbor said a moving crew cleared it out. Yesterday, Ethan said, running a hand through his hair, his voice rising in frustration. She blocked my number. She blocked my social media. Jade, where did she go? Did she tell you anything? Jade walked over to him, her expression softening into deep concern. She reached out, her hand gently resting on his forearm. Ethan, calm down. You're shaking. Let me try to call her. She pulled out her phone and dialed. Ethan watched her closely, waiting for the ringtone that would signal Vienna was still within reach, but after a few seconds, Jade slowly lowered the phone, her face falling. She blocked me, too, Jade whispered, her voice trembling slightly. How could she do this? We've been friends for 10 years. Why would she block me? Ethan's heart sank further into his chest. If Vienna had blocked Jade too, this wasn't just a petty lover's quarrel. I don't understand. Jade said, a tear pooling in the corner of her eye. Is she angry because we went to that restaurant without her? I told her we got takeout for her. I even told her it was my idea to go because I knew she wanted to try it. I was just trying to help Ethan. Did I do something wrong? Looking at Jade's tears, Ethan's irritation flared. But this time, it wasn't directed at Jade. It was directed at Vienna's selfishness. How could Vienna hurt her best friend like this? Jade had always been so considerate, always trying to bridge the gap between them. No, Jade, you didn't do anything wrong, Ethan said, his voice hardening. Vienna is just being incredibly childish. She's trying to punish me, and she's dragging you into it. Let her throw her fit. When she realizes she can't survive in the city without me, she'll come crawling back. She always does. But deep down in a corner of his mind, he refused to acknowledge. A cold voice whispered. This time, she didn't look back. The new apartment was small, but it was flooded with natural light. Located in a quiet neighborhood 3 miles away from her old place, it had a small balcony. Where Vienna could finally keep the potted ferns she had always wanted, ferns Ethan had claimed took up too much space and looked messy. Vienna stood by the kitchen counter, slowly stirring a cup of hot chamomile tea. The steam rose, warming her face. For the first time in 7 years, there was no noise. There was no phone buzzing with demands to buy groceries she wouldn't eat. No late-night texts asking her to explain why she hadn't ironed his shirts. No sudden changes of plans to accommodate Jade's emergencies. She took a sip of the tea. It was sweet, just the way she liked it. No one was there to tell her that sweet things were bad for her teeth or a waste of money. Her phone lay on the counter, completely silent. She had changed her number the previous morning. The only people who had the new one were her mother and her new employer. A soft knock on the door broke her thoughts. Vienna walked over and checked the peephole. Standing outside was a young man in a casual gray cashmere sweater carrying a large thriving monstera plant in a ceramic pot. She opened the door with a small smile. Julian Vance, her new senior colleague and the project director at the architectural firm she had just joined, smiled warmly. I promised I'd bring a housewarming gift that actually survives indoor lighting. Where do you want this giant? On the corner by the balcony, please, Vienna said, stepping aside to let him in. Julian carried the plant across the room, his movements easy and deliberate. He set it down gently, adjusting one of the broad green leaves with a practiced hand. When he turned back to her, his dark eyes were crinkled with amusement. How are you settling in? It's perfect, Vienna said sincerely. It's so quiet. Quiet is good, but don't get too used to it. Julian teased, gently leaning against the balcony frame. Starting Monday, the West Side redevelopment project is going to keep us both running on caffeine and 5 hours of sleep. The board was incredibly impressed by your portfolio from New York. They're expecting big things from our new lead designer. Vienna felt a genuine spark of excitement in her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. In New York, Ethan had always subtly minimized her career. It's just drawing lines on paper, Vienna. My finance job is what actually pays the bills. Over time, she had started to believe him, settling into a mediocre role just to keep her schedule flexible enough to serve his needs. I'm ready, Vienna said, her voice firm. I've spent too long standing still. Julian looked at her, his gaze lingering on her face for a moment longer than usual. There was a quiet intensity in his eyes, but it was respectful, devoid of the demanding pressure she was so used to from Ethan. I know you are, Julian said softly. By the way, I booked a table at that new French bistro down the street for the team's welcoming lunch on Monday. I checked the menu. They have an entirely nut-free kitchen. I know how severe your allergy is. Vienna froze, her teacup halfway to her lips. She stared at him, her heart skipping a beat. You remembered? She whispered. Julian frowned slightly, looking confused by her reaction. Of course, I remembered. You mentioned it during your second interview when we grabbed coffee. It's a life-threatening allergy, Vienna. Why wouldn't I remember? Why wouldn't he remember? The question echoed in her mind. Ethan had lived with her for 7 years. Yet, just 2 days ago, he had tried to order her almond pudding, a dish that would have sent her into anaphylactic shock, only to be corrected by Jade. Vienna felt a sudden sharp sting behind her eyes, but she forced it down. She looked at Julian, her smile soft, but filled with a new, quiet resolve. Thank you, Julian, she said. It means a lot. 3 weeks had passed, and the initial anger Ethan felt had begun to curdle into something else, a restless, gnawing discomfort. At first, he had enjoyed the absolute freedom. He didn't have to report his whereabouts to anyone. Didn't have to listen to Vienna's quiet sighs when he came home late and could spend as much time as he wanted, helping Jade or hanging out with his friends. But the reality of daily life without Vienna was proving to be a slow, grating nightmare. Ethan, where are my blue cufflinks? Ethan muttered to himself, tearing through his dresser drawers. The bedroom was a mess. Clothes were piled on the chair. Dust bunnies were gathering in the corners. And the bed sheets hadn't been washed in 3 weeks. In the past, he never had to search for anything. His clothes were always freshly laundered, pressed, and arranged by color in the closet. The apartment had always smelled of clean linen and lavender. Now, it smelled of stale takeout and damp towels. He grabbed a mismatched pair of socks and shoved his feet into his shoes. He had a lunch meeting with his mother, and he was already 10 minutes late. When he arrived at the upscale restaurant, Mrs. Lucas was already seated, sipping her tea. Her expression was cold, her posture rigid. You're late, she said as Ethan sat down. Traffic was bad, Mom. Ethan sighed, pulling out his phone out of habit. Put that away, Mrs. Lucas said sharply. I didn't invite you here to watch you stare at a screen. I want to know what's going on with Vienna. Ethan's hand stiffened on his phone. I told you, Mom. We broke up. She's throwing a tantrum and moved out. She'll come back when she cools down. Mrs. Lucas let out a cold mocking laugh. A tantrum? Ethan, are you truly that blind? Or are you just incredibly stupid? Mom, do not mom me, she interrupted, her eyes flashing with anger. Vienna Winters loved you for 7 years. She followed you to the city. She cooked for you. She cleaned for you. She tolerated your utterly inappropriate relationship with that Jade girl, and she did it all without a single complaint. And how did you treat her? You treated her like an unpaid maid. That's not true. Ethan argued, his face flushing with embarrassment and anger. I took care of her. I was planning on marrying her. Marrying her? Mrs. Lucas leaned forward, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You postponed the wedding date because of your career. Meanwhile, you had time to take Jade to expensive restaurants, buy her white roses on her birthday, and play her knight in shining armor. Do you think I'm blind? Do you think Vienna was blind? Jade is just a friend. She's Vienna's best friend. And yet, when Vienna had a fever of 102, you were rubbing Jade's stomach because of her cramps, Mrs. Lucas said, her voice dripping with disgust. When I heard that, I wanted to slap some sense into you myself. If my husband had ever done something like that to me, I would have divorced him on the spot. Ethan sat frozen, his mother's words hitting him like physical blows. He had never looked at it that way. To him, Jade was fragile, single, and needed help. Vienna was strong, independent, and she was his. He thought she would always be there. He thought her love was an infinite resource. She changed her number. Mrs. Lucas said, her tone softening into a grim sort of pity. I tried to call her last week to apologize for your behavior. Her old number is disconnected. She's gone, Ethan. She's finally realized her worth. And she's never coming back to you. She will, Ethan said, his voice sounding hollow even to himself. 7 years doesn't just disappear. It does when you spend those 7 years slowly killing her love for you. His mother replied coldly. Enjoy your lunch. I'm leaving. She stood up, threw a few bills onto the table, and walked out without looking back. Ethan sat alone at the table, the expensive food in front of him suddenly, looking incredibly unappetizing. His phone buzzed in his hand. It was a message from Jade. Ethan, my sink is leaking again. Could you come over and help me fix it after work? I tried calling a plumber, but they're so expensive and I'm so clumsy with tools. Pleading face. Normally, Ethan would have replied instantly, reassuring her that he'd be right over. But today, staring at the message, a sudden, heavy wave of exhaustion washed over him. He remembered the day the pipe burst in Vienna's apartment. He had told her, I don't have time to help you with that. Find a repairman yourself. Stop making a fuss. He had been too busy that day. Why? Because he was helping Jade pick out a new sofa. The memory long buried under his own self-justification suddenly flared with an agonizing clarity. He stared at Jade's text, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. For the first time in his life, he didn't want to go. The transition of Ethan and Jade's relationship from best friends to something closer was not the romantic fairy tale Jade had envisioned. Without Vienna acting as the silent, suffering buffer, the dynamic between them began to shift. Jade had always enjoyed Ethan's attention because it was stolen. She liked knowing that with a single text she could pull a committed man away from his girlfriend. It made her feel desired, fragile, and uniquely powerful. But now that Vienna was gone, Ethan was fully available. And suddenly, the thrill was fading. Worse, Ethan was changing. Ethan, you're quiet tonight, Jade said, swirling her wine glass in her hand. They were sitting in her living room. She had ordered expensive Italian food, expecting Ethan to pay for it as usual. But he had simply handed her his card without the cheerful, attentive smile he used to wear. I'm just tired, Ethan said, his eyes fixed on the television screen, though he wasn't really watching. Are you still thinking about Vienna? Jade asked, her voice dropping into that soft, tentative tone she used to sound vulnerable. I'm really worried about her. Too, I can't believe she just cut us off like that. It's so unlike her to be so petty. Ethan turned his head slowly to look at her. For the first time, the word petty, when applied to Vienna, didn't sound right to him. Is it petty? Ethan asked quietly. Jade blinked, caught off guard. Well, yes, I mean to block her best friend of 10 years and her boyfriend of 7 years over a simple misunderstanding. It's very immature, don't you think? Ethan looked around Jade's apartment. He saw the white roses he had bought her, still sitting in a vase on her dining table. He saw the designer handbag resting on the chair, the one he had helped her buy because she couldn't afford it on her salary. She couldn't afford it on her salary. Even though he had told Vienna they needed to save money for their wedding, she wasn't being immature. Ethan said, his voice flat. She was tired. Jade's expression stiffened. Ethan, what is that supposed to mean? Are you blaming me? I didn't ask her to leave. I've only ever wanted the best for both of you. Did you? Ethan asked, a sudden dark clarity settling into his mind. When you called me to rub your stomach because of your cramps. Knowing Vienna had a 102 degrees fever. Did you want the best for her then? Jade gasped, her face turning pale. Ethan, how can you say that? I was in pain. I didn't know how sick she was. You knew, Ethan said, the words heavy and cold. I told you on the phone before I came over. You knew and you still asked me to stay. Jade stammered, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. You're being so cruel to me. I thought you cared about me. I did. Ethan said, standing up. But I realized something today. I spent 7 years ignoring the woman who actually loved me just to play the hero for someone who only wanted my attention when it belonged to someone else. Ethan, Jade cried out as he walked toward the door. He didn't look back. He shut the door behind him, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. But as he stood by the elevator, he realized there was no triumph in his realization, only a vast, cavernous emptiness. He had finally opened his eyes. But the world he woke up to was entirely devoid of Vienna. The West Side Redevelopment Project Gala was the biggest event of the season, held in a grand glass-walled pavilion overlooking the Hudson River. The room was filled with the city's top architects, developers, and investors. Vienna stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows wearing an elegant emerald green silk gown that draped beautifully over her shoulders. Her hair was swept up in a loose, sophisticated bun, exposing the graceful curve of her neck. She held a glass of champagne, laughing softly at something Julian had just said. She looked radiant. The tired, anxious lines that used to shadow her face were completely gone, replaced by a glowing, confident energy. You're the star of the evening, Vienna, Julian said, his eyes shining with genuine admiration. The lead developer just told me your concept for the waterfront park is the most innovative design he's seen in a decade. They're going to approve the budget by tomorrow morning. I couldn't have done it without your feedback, Julian, Vienna said, her heart swelling with pride. You kept me grounded when my ideas got too wild. Nonsense. You're a force of nature, Julian said softly, stepping a bit closer. I'm just lucky I get to stand next to you. The warmth of his words sent a pleasant shiver down Vienna's spine. Over the past few months, Julian had shown her what it truly meant to be cherished. He didn't demand her attention. He earned it. He didn't make her feel like a burden. He made her feel like a partner. Suddenly, the air in the room seemed to grow cold. Vienna felt a familiar heavy gaze on her. She turned her head slightly, her eyes scanning the crowd, and froze. Standing near the entrance of the pavilion, looking disheveled and completely out of place in a slightly wrinkled suit, was Ethan. He looked thinner, his eyes hollow and shadowed with exhaustion. His gaze was locked onto her, filled with a mixture of disbelief, longing, and a desperate raw pain. Beside him, clutching his arm tightly as if trying to anchor him, was Jade. She was wearing a flashy over-the-top red dress, but her face was tense. Her eyes darting nervously between Ethan and Vienna. Julian noticed Vienna's sudden stillness. He followed her gaze, his brow furrowing slightly as he recognized Ethan from the old photos Vienna had shown him when she explained her past. Do you want to leave? Julian asked quietly, his hand instinctively reaching out to rest reassuringly on the small of her back. Vienna looked at Julian, feeling the steady, calming warmth of his touch. The panic she expected to feel didn't come. Instead, she felt a profound sense of detachment. The man standing across the room wasn't the giant who had dominated her life for 7 years. He was just a stranger in a poorly fitting suit. No, Vienna said, her voice steady and clear. I have no reason to hide. Across the room, Ethan broke away from Jade's grip, ignoring her protests, and began walking directly toward Vienna. His steps were hurried, almost stumbling, as if he were afraid she would disappear if he blinked. Vienna. Ethan breathed as he reached her, his voice cracking. He didn't even look at Julian. Vienna, it's really you. Vienna set her champagne glass down on a passing waiter's tray. Hello, Ethan. You look beautiful, he stammered, his eyes drinking in her face. Her dress, the confident posture he had never seen her hold before. I've been looking for you everywhere. I went to your old office. I called your mother. Please, Vienna, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, Ethan. Vienna said, her tone polite but entirely devoid of warmth. We broke up months ago. No, that was a mistake, Ethan pleaded, taking a step closer, his hands reaching out as if to grab hers. But Julian subtly stepped into his path. His tall imposing frame creating an impenetrable barrier. Sir, I suggest you take a step back, Julian said, his voice low and dangerous, though his expression remained perfectly calm. Ethan's eyes flared with a sudden ugly jealousy. Who the hell are you? This is between me and my fiancé. Ex-fiancé. Vienna corrected him, her voice ringing out clearly, attracting the attention of several nearby guests. And this is Julian Vance, my partner, both in work and in life. The word partner struck Ethan like a physical blow. He staggered back a half step, his face turning a sickly shade of pale. Partner. Ethan whispered, his eyes darting between Vienna and Julian. No, Vienna. You can't do this. 7 years. We spent 7 years together. You loved me. I did. Vienna said, looking him dead in the eye. I loved you so much that I let you treat me like an afterthought. I loved you so much that I let you spend my birthday with Jade. Let you give my things to Jade, let you leave me in a flooded apartment because you were too busy. I loved you enough to destroy myself for you. She took a deep breath and for the first time she felt absolutely light. But I don't love you anymore, Ethan. The girl who would have forgiven you for this is dead. You killed her piece by piece over 7 years. And I am never bringing her back. Vienna, please. Tears finally spilled over Ethan's lashes, tracking down his hollow cheeks. I made mistakes. I know that now. I broke off contact with Jade. I don't see her anymore. I realized what I lost. Just give me one more chance, please. Before Vienna could answer, Jade finally caught up, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment as she grabbed Ethan's arm. Ethan, stop making a fool of yourself. Everyone is looking at us. If she wants to be with some other guy, let her go. Ethan swung his arm back, violently, breaking Jade's grip. Shut up, Jade. He roared, his voice echoing through the pavilion. I don't care about you. I never cared about you. It was always her and you. You just kept taking and taking until you ruined the only good thing I ever had. Jade froze, her face draining of color, her mouth hanging open in utter shock and humiliation. The crowd around them began to whisper, pointing and staring at the unfolding drama. Vienna looked at the two of them, the man who had neglected her and the friend who had betrayed her. She felt no anger. She felt no satisfaction in their ruin. She only felt a deep, profound pity. You should leave, Ethan, Vienna said softly. Before you lose whatever dignity you have left. Julian waved over a security guard who immediately began walking toward them with a firm, no-nonsense expression. Ethan looked at Vienna one last time. He saw the complete absence of love in her eyes, no hatred, no resentment, just a cold, flat emptiness. He realized then with a crushing certainty that she was truly gone. He had pushed her off the ledge and she had learned how to fly without him. Without a word, Ethan turned and walked out of the pavilion, his head bowed. His shoulders slumped. Jade, unable to bear the whispering crowd's judgmental stares, hurried after him, her heels clicking loudly against the marble floor. But Ethan didn't even pause to wait for her. He walked out into the cold, New York night, entirely alone. 6 months later, the spring air in the city was crisp and filled with the scent of blooming cherry blossoms. Vienna stood on the balcony of her apartment, holding a mug of warm coffee. The giant monstera plant Julian had given her was thriving, its broad green leaves catching the morning sun. She felt a pair of warm arms wrap gently around her waist from behind. Julian rested his chin on her shoulder, inhaling the scent of her hair. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. "Good morning," Vienna smiled, leaning back against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his hands rubbing soothing circles on her hips. "Just how different this spring feels," Vienna said, looking out over the city skyline. "For so long, I thought my life was meant to be lived in the shadows of someone else's needs. I thought love was supposed to hurt." Julian turned her around gently, his hands cupping her face. He looked down at her with an intensity that made her breath catch, not of demand, but of pure, unadulterated devotion. "Love is never supposed to hurt, Vienna," Julian said softly. "Love is supposed to be your safe harbor. And as long as I'm here, you will never have to fight for your place in my world. You are my first, middle, and last priority." He leaned down and kissed her, a slow, deep kiss that tasted of warmth and new beginnings. Vienna closed her eyes, letting herself sink into his embrace. She had spent 7 years waiting for a man to remember her door, only to realize that the right man would build a home just to keep her safe inside. She was finally. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel.